Chapter 5 The Watchmen of the Desert, the King of the Forest, and the Princesses of the Sea. That same day began the funeral of the brave Ronald Watson. To the full, his name was finally revealed. It was a day for mourning because it wasn't just Ronald they lost. More than a dozen fighters fell to the dragon's rage, not to mention all the other citizens over the past few months. Drake, Haru, Julia, and Maya felt a little guilty. They were once again the only ones to make it out alive. Ronald Watson had begun a new era. He would be remembered throughout the history books. Once it would be about him and Mordu, unless the world couldn't be saved after all. Taraku's war was fought, but the war of the world had yet to be prevented. The day was a sad one. The losses outweighed what was gained. Something else marked a change in time and caused fear among the people. The first snowflakes started falling. Most of Taraku's people saw snow for the first time that day. The four had to continue the search. After agreements were made and the people from Sandstone City decided to head out to other cities and towns in Taraku, shortly after the funeral, the four headed out as well. The night arrived and the temperature had suddenly dropped immensely. Their journey took them to end. Before they made it there, unexpected developments took place. Sand, sand, and take a guess, sand, Haru complained after many hours of strolling through the desert. Drake grabbed the map and tried to find out approximately where they were. He noticed a small village was on their way to end. Hey, a village, Julia pointed out at the same time. Then the border of Taraku should be right behind there. We're about to see some green again, Drake said. They decided to pass through the village and ask people who lived there about CK. But once they stood at the gate, there was no one to be found. It was quiet. A little too quiet. What happened here? Julia asked. Suddenly, something extremely unexpected happened, as a random giant boulder flew towards them. Look out! Drake shouted. Everyone managed to dodge it in time. Yelling arose from where the boulder came from, and more boulders came their way. What the hell are they doing? Haru asked. Let's go around, Drake said. But a surprise attack stopped them from backing off. Several people came jumping down from low rooftops and walls and forced them to enter the village. Quick, inside! Drake called out. They ran through the gate, and like it wasn't enough, arrows started raining down on them. Haru kept them safe by blowing the arrows away in time. A man walked their way, and Haru recognized him. You were there, Haru said, shocked. What? Julia said. You were at his side during the war. And we are forever loyal, the man said. Who is he, Haru? Julia asked. Guys, these are leftover followers of Mordor. The man chuckled and started attacking them as soon as he gained backup. He was carrying 2 krisses, while others fought with swords. We've been through this already, Haru shouted angrily, while he simply blew the followers away with a gust of air. They crashed into the walls of houses and preferred to stay on the ground and groan instead of getting up. Whoa, alright then, Drake said. They continued running, past the catapults that had thrown the boulders, but were soon stopped by more and more followers. All Mordu warriors, attack! A woman shouted. Okay, that's it, Drake said as he barged in on a crowd of followers. That is the worst and most cringe-worthy name I have ever heard, he shouted angrily. Drake was attacking furiously, by moving his hands and arms and bending flames like never before. While Drake and Haru fought with such anger, Julia tried to think of what she could do to help. But then she felt something. She bent her knees and placed her hands on the ground. She could feel the roots of the trees of the forest from several meters past the village, which she managed to bend to her will, all the way to the battlefield. The roots erupted from the ground and entangled the followers until they were stuck to the ground, unable to move. Drake, Haru, and Julia had such a grudge towards Mordor's followers, and somehow it even boosted their capability to fight. At first, Maya just stood and watched, a bit surprised. Dang, you guys really hate them. But soon enough, Maya revealed her fan and aimed for the knees of the followers. No matter the grudge, killing them wasn't easy for any of them. They were doing well, but the tides were about to change. Haru was knocked down by a punch of a follower who had just dropped its weapon, and everyone turned to Haru. Haru! Drake shouted. But while Drake was distracted, he was barely able to dodge a lethal sword's blow, leaving him with a small cut on his shoulder. They were slowly being overrun. Maya was kicked in the stomach, which led her to drop her fan and fall into the ground. She was unable to fight before she received a kick to the head and fell on her back. She was in pain but tried to get up, but the man who got her to the ground started stepping on her hand. Maya was left screaming in pain. Oh no you don't, Haru said after seeing what the man was doing to her. In an instant, he launched himself upright and blew the man a few meters away. He ran towards Maya and created a current that made him able to pull Drake and Julia towards him. When they were together, he gathered all the power he could find and created a dome of wind around them that started turning, until it formed a tornado that hurled all the followers away once Haru extended the tornado's reach. The hurricane that Haru had created defended them from any further harm. Everyone was astounded after seeing what he could do. It did cost Haru a ton of energy and strength, therefore he had trouble catching a breath afterwards. While everyone was still staring at Haru, ultimately surprised, he proposed to run. "Shall we?" he said, still out of breath. The others didn't know what to say, so they all started running. "Thank you." Maya at least managed to show Haru her gratitude. "We're almost there," Julia pointed out. They almost made it to the end of the village, and they could see forestry ahead. They kept on running and thought they finally escaped the followers, but were surprised by one final appearance. From behind the corner of a house, one lost follower appeared and swung his bat, completely knocking Drake out. The last thing Drake saw was a wooden bed coming right at him, and the dark sky as he fell to the ground. The three friends managed to escape after all. The last follower hadn't proven to be a challenge. They were carrying Drake across the border, who once again had lost consciousness. The desert finally came to an end, when the border was marked with grass, slowly increasing in number as they came closer to the forest. Mordor's followers had recovered and were about to attack again until Julia gave them a furious look and pulled a whole tree out of the ground. Mordor's followers finally realized it was best to leave them be. Julia let go of the tree after smashing it back into the ground. They made their way through the forest. But it wasn't nearly like Dragonia's forest. Instead, it was dark, silent, and an ominous fog filled the space in between the trees. Haru finally managed to wake Drake up. He regained consciousness and was immediately troubled by a headache. Julia filled him in on the few things that he'd missed. Soon enough, Drake tried to focus on whatever was practical again. "If we want to travel to Inflatus, we'll have to go west. We will have to cross an ocean again, so let's hope there'll be boats." "I bet it's just another sloop," Haru said. "Probably, but we've managed before," Drake said. "And hey, this time we're not up against bloody prehistoric creatures." "I'm really hoping it's just a normal ocean," Julia said. "I do too," Drake replied. "I missed out on quite a lot, didn't I?" Maya asked. Calypso was right. Ent couldn't offer them much. There was no one, nothing. The silence was all they knew for hours. "This forest is depressing me," Haru said. "Just you wait. Bet that ocean's gonna be worse," Drake said. "Well, you're biased, with water and all. Would you like another mosasaur? Perhaps a kraken?" "No thanks." Drake wasn't wrong. The ocean kept secrets they were about to discover. A new kind of danger awaited them, but perhaps they first had to worry about the threat they first had to overcome. The hours that passed seemed to take longer by the minute. Their boredom made them tired, and they started doubting whether or not they were even going the right way. Something was wrong with the forest because they started losing grip on their surroundings. The night was far from over, but no one could keep their eyes open. And during one of those moments that no one was looking, Drake had suddenly disappeared into thin air. Meanwhile at Drake. Exhaustion caused Drake to lose control of his legs, and he fell on the ground without anyone realizing. He was so very tired. "I'm so done with fog," Drake said, thinking it was the fog causing him to feel so tired. Even though he wasn't exactly wrong or right, whatever was happening wasn't particularly normal. Drake felt like giving up and had no reason to continue whatever it was he was doing. And right before he forgot his entire quest, something did force him to move. He heard a loud roar and knew it couldn't mean anything good. Drake quickly got up and started running, hoping it'd be in the right direction. He heard loud footsteps and something destroying the trees. Drake had to know what it was, so he turned around to look. But while he did, he didn't pay attention to where he was running, and he tripped over some roots. He got up again and hid behind a tree. In the corner of his eyes, he saw trees being smashed down, and the roaring continued to come closer. Drake felt the ground shake, not just from the footsteps, but from the trees hitting the ground as well. Pieces of wood flew by Drake's head, and before he knew it, the upper part of the tree he was hiding behind was crackling, and started falling over. Drake moved aside, dodging the tree. Afterwards, it was suddenly quiet. Drake feared the worst and looked up. A giant was looking right at him. Drake startled and immediately started running. A giant, covered in cloth and its face hidden, started following him. While dragging along a gigantic piece of metal, it cut away each tree in its way. Drake knew he couldn't possibly outrun the monster, but was unsure of how he'd stand a chance against something as humongous as that. He couldn't hold on much longer either. Exhaustion started to get the better of him, and eventually his legs couldn't carry him anymore. The giant got to him and raised its weapon, but before he could deliver a blow, a tree knocked it over. Julia and the others found him at last. I can't believe I can make trees fly, Julia said humorously. Well, don't stop now, Haru replied. Take Drake, I'll deal with this one. Haru and Maya helped Drake up. I knew I recognized this forest, Haru said. I've been here before. What? Drake said, exhausted. They started running again, while both Haru and Maya had put one of Drake's arms around their necks in order to carry him. This giant, it's almost the same as the one in Rio, remember? When I stepped through that portal, I ended up here. Luckily, there are not as many giants as I saw back then, or well, I hope it'll stay that way. Julia kept trying to fend off the giant, but the tree she was using was eventually cut through into two. The two parts she had left she threw against the giant, one by one, in order to slow it down as much as possible. While trying to root down the giant, she kept on running. The fact that Haru, Julia, and Maya were together for the most part helped them, and somehow caused them to be less tired than Drake. But Julia felt that using her powers had caused her to feel weak. All she could do was pray that she'd make it to the shore in time. Drake, Haru, and Maya could finally see the trees decrease in number, and the forest coming to an end. There it is, Haru pointed out. The moment they took their first steps in the sand, their exhaustion had gone away in a blink, but Julia was still running. Told you, Haru said when a sloop awaited them at the shore. Quick, get ready, Drake said, all recovered. Now that Drake had recovered his energy in an instant, he went to help Julia. He ran towards her and stopped as he reached her. Get behind me! Julia turned around and looked at him, unsure of what he was doing. We have to go, Drake! But he didn't listen. Instead, he tried to focus. Drake closed his eyes for 3 seconds, during which all sound faded. After the 3 seconds, he opened his eyes, bent through his knees until he blasted himself up in the air by creating explosions underneath his feet. Drake shouted loudly as he aimed at the giant and blew the monster dozens of meters away with another explosion. Drake landed again and followed by being slightly surprised by what he had just done. While the giant took its time to recover, Drake ran to the sloop and hopped in right after Julia did too. Where'd you learn that? Haru asked. Honestly, no clue. It's fire, isn't it? Drake replied. Maya stared at Drake with a surprised yet worried look. She was the only one who knew it wasn't just fire that caused such explosions. The elements required weren't in Drake's grasp, although that's what everyone thought. The abnormality of Drake's capability to create explosions was ignored, even by Maya, when they recalled they still had to get away. I got this, Haru said. He rose up and started pushing them forward with a gust of air while aiming at the water. Quickly enough, they moved away from the shore. The giant stopped chasing them when they decided not to cross the water. Something withheld it from even setting one foot in the water. Instead, it roared, full of anger. The four got away, and once again, in the nick of time. The giant's roars were still audible, even after having sailed for many kilometers. Julia and Maya were using the paddles to move forward so that Drake could take a break. The sea was oddly quiet. No waves, and not even any ripples in the water other than the ones the boat and paddles were causing. The moon shone bright, and its light lit up the sea. The sky was filled with stars, but while the sky showed so much beauty, the ocean could only provide worries. Just like with the forest in End, something about the ocean was off. I can take over if you'd like, Haru proposed. All right, thank you, Julia answered. Haru switched places with Julia, and she went to sit next to Drake. Drake was quiet. He stared at the pitch-black water. His arm leaned over the railing and his chin rested on his knee. Silence never lasted very long, so eventually the situation changed. You hear that? Drake asked as he looked up. Hear what? Maya asked. What is that? Haru asked. I don't hear a thing, Julia said. Neither do I, Maya said. The color of Drake's pupils suddenly changed, and he seemed to have entered some sort of trance. It's beautiful, he said. Something sang to him. All Drake could hear now was a woman's voice. How brave of you to sail this sea. Come here, come down, come with me. Your heart's in line as pure as wine. Your dreams are here, come, it's fine. It is, Haru followed up after the color of his pupils changed as well. Something appeared from the water and immediately got Drake's attention. The woman's voice came from a beautiful mermaid. She looked straight into Drake's eyes and kept singing. Underneath this bed of gold lie the stories you were told. As young men like yourself do wish, if you come, I'll grant your kiss. Before Haru, a different mermaid appeared, but they all sang the same song. So strong, so brave, my sailor boy, with me all you will know is joy. Listen to my voice up above. I speak only of our love. Julia and Maya were completely unable to hear the singing of the mermaids, and they remained completely unaffected. But Drake and Harrow were slowly losing grip on reality, and a craving that wasn't even really there pulled them in. And right as Julia turned around, she saw Harrow being granted a kiss and being dragged into the water. "No!" Julia yelled as she tried to grasp Harrow's leg, but he was already under. While Harrow had lost his grip on reality, all he could see was the face of that mermaid, and all he could hear was their song. Treacherous waters lie ahead, all you'll find is already dead. For life I have a bed to spare, if you need me I'll be there. The mermaid who was trying to seduce Drake was close to succeeding, and when Julia had to watch Harrow get dragged down under, she had to try and save what was left, or who was left. But she was too late again. As she turned around, Drake sank through the ocean layer, and both were out of sight in the blink of an eye. For Drake and Harrow, the mermaid's song wouldn't end, not until their lives were lost. How great of you to sail this sea. Come here, come down, come with me. Your heart and eyes, we are your prize. Your life is here, none pay the price. But the mermaids weren't done yet. The ones that weren't occupied had started to try and take down what was left. They started attacking the sloop and tried to make it capsize. Julia was holding her bow and shot at some of the mermaids. That's cruel, Maya said. You kidding? They're killing our friends. Ah! Julia barely managed to dodge a trident the mermaid threw at her head. Guess I just know them from the fairy tales, Maya said. I'm going in, Julia said as she laid down her bow, quiver, and arrows. What? That's suicide, Maya replied. Well, they're dying down there. Julia jumped into the water and started swimming as fast as she could. The mermaids followed her. Maya looked over the edge as she saw Julia disappear. She was all alone and unsure of what to do. Well, crap. Meanwhile, on the water, Julia could see Harrow. The mermaids hadn't dragged him all the way down yet, but Drake was nowhere to be seen. She was so close, but something blocked her from reaching Harrow. The mermaids had left the sloop to come after her, and they had grabbed her and were pulling her back. She tried so hard, but she couldn't reach him. Harrow was still in a trance, and the mermaid's song hadn't ended yet either. Go anywhere our voices sound, anywhere our songs are found. Take my hand and swim with me, I'll grant all you wish to be. Julia tried to scream without swallowing water. She did everything she could to get loose, but there was just no way. Harrow looked at the mermaid as if he was in love, and he was completely unaware that he was dying. There were mere seconds left before he would drown, but all he heard was that beautiful voice. Let none prevent your journey down. The watchmen are kinder in our town. Our king is in no need of a crown, and the princess wears a marvelous gown. Time seemed to slow down. Harrow, completely impervious to anything other than the mermaid's spell. Julia, unable to move and close to running out of breath. Maya, in distress due to having no clue of what was happening. And Drake, still nowhere to be found. Did they get him already? The mermaid song's final lines were sung, and the end drew near. For Harrow, everything else in the world had disappeared. Almost there, come, my dear. Your life of love and joy is near. Be with me under the sea, where all is beauty, just with me. Maya started screaming, hoping she'd be heard. But for what? She was more scared than ever. Was she about to lose all of her friends just like that? She wanted to move, but her fear didn't allow her. Her body wouldn't move. All she could do was stare at the darkness. How kind of you to plunge this sea. Come here, come down, come with me. Your heart is right, join the light. Your world is here. Come on, just bite. Julia's air was almost gone. Harrow didn't realize it, but he was even closer to drowning. They were dying, and the mermaid's song was now ending. Come here, come down, no need for that tear. Come with me. We'll be together, dear. Harrow and Julia both closed their eyes. They were out of air. But air was provided. Drake's pupils were flickering with a whitish yellow glow, and his hair was waving by the force of the spherical dome of air he had created. Drake had managed to snap out of the mermaid's spell, but what he was doing at that time was unexplainable to everyone. Harrow had passed out, but Julia was able to breathe in time. Drake had pulled Julia in and was carrying Harrow as he floated in the middle of the dome. Julia was holding on to him and looked at him with great astonishment, but also fear. Drake wasn't like himself. His pupils had changed color, his expression was full of anger, and this magic was something Drake never had been able to pull off. Anger and sorrow were all Julia could see on him. The mermaids were trying to get in, but Drake used the dome as a barrier. The air within was his shield, and the edge of water pulled the mermaids back. Nothing could get in, but Drake couldn't control it anymore. The dome became bigger, and didn't stay a dome, but became a whirlpool, one that pierced the ocean's layer. The mermaids were being dragged along in circles with an extreme speed that even they couldn't deal with. Julia looked at them and heard their screams. She was terrified and had to wake Drake up. "Drake, stop! Drake!" But he wouldn't stop. The whirlpool had become an underwater tornado, lethal. Julia couldn't bear to see what was happening. Who was this boy capable of such power? "Drake!" Her call for him to cease the madness worked, as he finally snapped out of it. The first thing he saw was the whirlpool decreasing in size and Julia's fearful expression. He quickly understood he was the cause of it, despite the unlikeliness of it. But he had to get everyone to safety. The whirlpool was closing in on them. He gave Haru to Julia, who continued to carry him. The hole in the ocean closed after they took a deep breath, and Drake gave Julia a push that helped them get to the surface faster. After Julia made it to the surface, she searched for the sloop. Maya saw them reach the surface, and her distress turned to relief. "Over here!" she called out. Julia noticed her and swam towards the sloop. Once she was there, Maya helped Haru and her on the sloop. Drake made it to the surface as well and noticed them immediately. He swam until he reached them and was helped on board by Julia. Maya had started to try and reanimate Haru. As much as Drake wanted to help, the moment they all made it to safety, he couldn't move anymore. He fell over. "Drake?" Julia said worriedly. Drake's eyes started closing. "Drake!" But he could feel relief again, as Maya succeeded in reanimating Haru. As he coughed and spit water, Drake's eyelids closed, and he was out. All of that took a toll on Drake, but it was worth it because he managed to save his friends. Maya was unharmed, Haru alive, and Julia saved. Though what she saw wouldn't be forgotten easily, and seeing as Drake wasn't going to remember a thing after waking up, she was the only one who saw Drake like no one ever had. Drake's exhaustion caused him to fall asleep. As he went under, the mermaid's song still echoed through his head. "Come with me."